Fires at work start in all sorts of ways. It doesn't take much. A strong light left too close to paper. A fault in electrical equipment. A smouldering cigarette butt falling onto upholstery. A spark from a grinder. Furniture or clothes too close to a heater. Cooking oil left unattended on the hob. A piece of dodgy wiring or an overloaded plug. Wherever you work, you're surrounded by things that'll burn given half a chance. And once a fire's started, it doesn't take very long at all for it to spread, unless you catch it early enough to extinguish it. If you discovered a fire in your workplace, would you know what to do? Would you panic like this, or would you be able to take decisive actions that could save lives and property? Do you know where the fire extinguishers are, and would you know how to use them?
There's flames everywhere. I was just terrified, and managed to find eventually where the extinguishers were, and got there and just didn't have a clue what to do. It's just the panic was just rising up in me. The time felt like it was running out.
Smoke billowing out, and my first reaction was just to run and get out.
I think it was water, carbon dioxide, and maybe a foam one, but I just didn't have a clue which one to choose. I didn't know which one to go for.
Frightened, and what's so sad is that I work in a kitchen with lots of fire extinguishers, and I had no idea on how to use them.
These two know only too well what it's like to face a fire at work. Eddie's office went up in smoke. He was lucky to escape. The factory where Kate worked was completely gutted, the result of an electrical fault. It didn't just scare the wits out of her, it put her out of work for a few months. It's an unfortunate fact that very many companies simply never recover from a major fire like this. Kate and her colleagues could have prevented this disaster. There were plenty of extinguishers, but no one knew how to use them. We hope that by the end of this video, Kate, Eddie and you will have the knowledge to tackle a fire with confidence. There's no substitute for hands-on training. That's why we've got Kevin Farnborough here to show us the ropes. It really pays to learn how to handle an extinguisher before you need to use one in anger. But first of all, there are 4 vital steps you need to take on detecting a fire. Firstly, you must raise the alarm, then call the fire brigade, and at the same time as the premises is evacuated, you can tackle the fire, if it's safe to do so. Most people's reaction would be to tackle the fire immediately, but by raising the alarm first, you have already put in train the safety procedures that could save lives if the fire does go quickly out of control. Only when you have called the brigade and started the procedure for evacuating the building should you attempt to tackle the fire, if it's safe to do so. You can only deal with the fire if you know where the extinguishers are located. It'll be too late to start looking when the fire happens, so find out where they are now. Which brings us neatly back to the subject of this video. The best way to deal with a fire is to use the right fire extinguisher while the fire's still small enough. As you can see here, there are several different types of extinguisher, but it's very unlikely that you will have anything like this display to choose from. A thorough fire risk assessment of your premises should have been carried out, so the extinguishers to hand should be the right ones for the job, though you should never take this for granted. But why are there so many different types of extinguisher in the first place? It's horses for courses. There are different types of extinguisher because there are different types of fire, officially 6 in all, although for all practical purposes there are only 3 or 4 you really need to know about. If, like Eddie, you work in an office, you will be surrounded mostly by solid materials such as wood, paper and cloth, curtains or furnishing fabrics, for example. In a workshop or studio, you'll probably have stored flammable liquids such as solvents, paints and oils. There may also be waxes or greases that will melt to create a flammable liquid. So many fires these days start in faulty electrical equipment, such as computers, printers and photocopiers, or perhaps scientific instruments. Not only does this equipment often release some pretty nasty chemicals when it burns, it also carries an electrical charge. So the first thing you need to do is to cut the power supply if it's safe to do so. If you work in a kitchen, you will almost certainly come into contact with one of these, one of the most potent workplace fire hazards there are, the deep fat fryer. They contain a huge source of fuel, the cooking oil, which is deliberately heated to near its fire flash point, which would seem like a pretty silly thing to do if it wasn't for our love of fried food. Cylinders and aerosols containing flammable gases pose very particular problems, and so do some metals. Fires involving gases and metals should only be dealt with by people who've been specially trained. If such a fire occurs where you work, raise the alarm and evacuate the building as quickly as possible. Those are the 5 most common types of fire, involving solids, flammable liquids, electrical hazards, cooking fats, and gases. In order to choose the right extinguisher for a particular fire, we need to understand how fire extinguishers actually work, because they don't all work in the same way. Fire feeds on 3 things, all of which are required for a fire to occur. Fuel, the combustible material that provides the source of energy. Oxygen that's present in the air. All combustion needs oxygen. And heat, to trigger the chemical reaction that ignites the fire. These 3 components represent the fire triangle. Remove any one of them and the fire goes out. You can cut off the oxygen by smothering the fire with a fire blanket, foam or carbon dioxide. Or you can remove the heat from the fire by cooling it with water, slowing down the chemical reaction until it stops altogether. In most cases, of course, removing the combustible material won't be an option. Water is the most common extinguishing agent, and it can be delivered from an extinguisher or a hose. The 9-litre water extinguisher is pretty heavy. Nowadays there are smaller, lighter water spray extinguishers with 6 or 3 litres of water plus an additive, which have as much firefighting power but are much easier to handle. Water is best used for fires involving solids, wood, paper, fabrics and furnishings. It works by removing the heat from the fire. Don't use water on fires involving electrical equipment, because the current can travel up the jet and electrocute
We
you.
must make sure that the fire does not get between us and our means of escape, so we have the exit behind us. I'm going to pull the pin, release the hose, holding the end of the hose, squeeze the levers together. Aim at the base of the fire and then using a slow sweeping motion work your way up. Don't get too close in there, Eddie. That's it, we're cooling that material down now.
At what point should I assume this fire's out?
Well, never assume that the fire is out. We need to discharge the whole of that extinguisher.
If the fire is spreading vertically, direct the jet towards the base of the fire and then follow it upwards with a sideways sweeping action. Make sure all of the hot spots are dealt with once you have finished with the main fire. Each type of extinguisher is identified with a zone of colour, a small colour patch or band. In the case of water, the zone of colour is red, the same as the rest of the extinguisher. While a pressurised water extinguisher delivers a total of 9 litres of water, a hose reel can pump out up to 90 litres in the same time.
Kevin, I thought this was for use by firefighters only.
No, it can be used by anybody that's been trained to use them. Normally recommend that at least 2 people use a hose reel.
Right.
2 basic types, there are manuals and automatics. The one we have here is an automatic hose reel.
So how would you actually turn this on?
Well, this one, when you pull the hose out, it automatically turns the water on after a couple of turns. The manuals, you must turn on the stopcock first. It will normally show you that.
Okay.
With either of them, ensure that the nozzle is actually switched off first. This is just a twist grip.
As with any sort of fire, don't be tempted to stay too long. If the fire doesn't start to die down quickly, or if the flames start to approach ceiling height, make your escape, closing any doors behind you.
What sort of range is it on this?
If you have a fire involving liquid fuels such as paints or oils, solvents or petrol, water can actually make matters worse. The puddle of water can spread the fire as the burning liquid floats on it. The best approach is to use a foam extinguisher. It has a cream-coloured patch on it. Foam works by starving the fire of oxygen.
So this one's for you, Kate.
Okay.
Colour-coded cream for use on flammable liquids. It works by building up a blanket of foam over the top of the liquid, cutting off the oxygen.
Right.
Okay, so we need to pull the pin. Release the hose. Holding the end of the hose, we're going to aim at the back inside edge of that tray. Bring it down slightly so we're hitting that back edge. The foam then builds up and it floats across from the back to the front, cutting off the oxygen. You can see the way it's working there. Just bring it down slightly, that's excellent. You see the fire's out. Okay, if you want to stop there, it's quite warm, isn't it? Very warm. That's why obviously we made sure that we have the exit behind us. Again, can't stipulate that enough. We must make sure that if something goes wrong, we can get away.
If you accidentally spill a flammable liquid, you can use foam to reduce the risk of it igniting, so it also has a part to play in fire prevention. Foam extinguishers are very useful, but they also have their limitations. They are not suitable for flowing liquids because it's difficult to form a blanket. And because foams are water-based, they are not suitable for fires involving electrical hazards or for burning solvents such as alcohol. And here's the third method of dealing with a flammable liquid fire. This time, in a small container such as a domestic chip pan. A fire blanket works in the same way as a foam spray, by starving the fire of oxygen.
The way to hold a fire blanket, grab plenty of material in each corner. Imagine that you're riding a bicycle. There's your handlebars there. Stick your thumbs out and then turn your hands in so your hands are well and truly protected from the fire, okay? Plenty of distance between you and the blanket. You just walk forward. When it touches, straight over. So if you want to come around here, okay, so make sure that's right under, great. Okay, so just straight forward, keep going, keep going, keep going, excellent. Make sure the blanket is right over the pan. Good. Now switch it off, well done, well anticipated. Switch it off either from there or the mains. We leave that now until the fire brigade takes it.
Fire blankets are not designed for repeated use, and once used, should be discarded and replaced with a new one. Which brings us on to dry powder extinguishers, which are identified with a blue patch or band. They also deprive the flames of oxygen and cover the fire with a layer of dry powder. You can use a dry powder extinguisher on any of the fires we have talked about, including fires involving electrical hazards.
Extinguisher, ideally suited for flammable liquid spills, can also be used on live electrical equipment. Colour-coded blue as general purpose extinguisher. It works by depriving the fire of oxygen and inhibits the combustion process. It's a very powerful, very effective fire extinguisher. It is also extremely messy. Again, we pull the pin, releasing the hose, holding the end of the hose. We squeeze the levers all the way down, no half-hearted attempt. Okay. With a spill, it's a very rapid sweeping motion. You literally drive the fire away from you.
Right.
Well, Bob's going to start a small spill here for us, so if we'd like to move out of the way.
Okay.
And remember the rapid sweep.
If you are dealing with a fire involving an electrical hazard, the first thing to do is turn off the power, if you can do so safely. While dry powder extinguishers are very effective, they have two downsides. They can impair vision, making it difficult to see what you're doing, and they make a heck of a mess. An alternative is one of these. It's suitable for most of the fires we have mentioned, including fires involving electrical equipment. Identified by a black zone of colour, it releases pure carbon dioxide gas.
On to fires involving electrical equipment. Best extinguisher for this, carbon dioxide. Colour-coded black, and it works by actually excluding the oxygen. One of the main points with electrical equipment, make sure that you switch it off. 9 times out of 10 you won't be able to do that near the equipment. You might have to do that at the mains, but you must switch it off to prevent reignition. A couple of points to note with the carbon dioxide. Pull the pin, direct the nozzle. If you'd like to hold that for me. Very important, the nozzle stays where you direct it to. Don't hold the nozzle itself, you get a build-up of ice on there. Do not hold the base. Okay. Either as you are now or 2 hands on the handle, whichever is more comfortable. If you'd like to just pull the pin for me now. Excellent. If you give it a quick squirt, right, a lot of noise with this extinguisher, so do remember that. We've got to get in through grills or vents. That's the only way we're going to get into the equipment itself. So as close as you safely could without putting yourself at risk, and just keep the extinguisher going until the fire is out. Okay. No short bursts. Just keep it So you can see, a very noisy extinguisher. If you feel this now, you can feel it's getting very cold.
Yeah, very cold.
That will actually get a build-up of ice.